Welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Eric Bolling. President Obama's 2012 budget dropped today with a thud. In it, the highly publicized budget cuts amount to mere cents on the dollar. Meanwhile, the thing is loaded with massive new spending initiatives. In fact, the cuts amount to only about $95 billion on a budget that looks to spend $3.7 trillion. That comes out to about 2.5%. Meanwhile, the budget proposes new spending on the internet, new spending on high-speed rail, and new spending on various entitlements like unemployment benefits. So, how does Mr. Obama plan on paying for all these new spending initiatives? Raising taxes, of course. How else would a liberal, some say socialist president, make ends meet? What happened to the Tea Party? Where are you guys? You promised that if we voted for you, government would shrink immediately. Well, not today. The national debt has now exceeded 100% of our economy. A sad footnote to another promise broken by Washington. Let's call it a Valentine's Day heartbreak. Joining me on tonight's all-star panel, on the left, attorney Joey Jackson, Fox News contributor Bob Beckel. In the middle, we've got our own Sandra Smith, and on the right, radio show host Chris Markowski. Beckel, I have to start with you, my friend. Here it is, $3.7 trillion budget with $95 billion in cuts. Where's the cuts? It just keeps growing. It's bigger and bigger. It's government out of control.
More government. He's not listening.
Not at all, Joey. 3.7 trillion. Well, of course, it is more spending.
How do we focus on that? How do we focus on that as opposed to what the president did was to lay out an agenda of priorities and to also call for a cut of $1 trillion in deficit spending?
That's 10 years.
Let's talk about that.
That's 10 years.
He laid out a responsible plan. You can't cut it tomorrow. He laid out a responsible plan, and that's what we have to look to.
Go ahead, Chris.
Why can't you cut it tomorrow? Why can't you start cutting right away? $100 billion a year? $100 billion? That's nothing. Not to mention the fact this is coming out higher taxes across the board.
Where are you going to get it? $100 billion is nothing?
You have to take it is nothing.
Okay.
It is nothing when you take into consideration Social Security and Medicare. If you were to actually put these on the books, we're bankrupt.
So tell us. We're going to have a lot more, Bob and Joey. We're going to have a lot more on this in the next block. But first, we've been warning you. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Take the Egyptian uprising. For 30 years, we've had a relatively stable Egypt. Love him or hate him, Hosni Mubarak kept America's interests in mind in a very volatile region of the world. We warned of other Middle Eastern countries seeing the successful overthrow of their Mubarak and their government and starting their own copycat revolutions. Today we see new uprisings in a very, very dangerous Iran, and in Yemen and Algeria, protesters seem to be testing the waters of revolution. Have we opened a Pandora's box with a confusing, tepid White House reaction to a very important ally?
Hold on, guys. The name of the show is Follow the Money, and that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to follow the money. Egypt doesn't have the money. They're going to have to get it from Iran. They're the largest grain importer in the entire world at this point in time. Their #1 industry is tourism. People are not going to want to go there. If, let's say, money can flow in. So Iran is going to be able to dictate a lot here.
The army controls Egypt right now and will continue to control Egypt. Where do they get their money from? They get their money from the United States, and they're not going to take any chance of losing that.
But the people still have to eat.
If you guys are so much worried about the Muslim Brotherhood, how about all the torture and murder that was taking place under Mubarak? You don't want to talk about that, do you?
We're going to have to leave it there. We have a lot to get to. We have a packed show. We're going to say thank you to Aaron Klein.
Good.
Last week, we told you about the Texas school district that took the Department of Education aid in exchange for a mandatory Arabic requirement added to the curriculum of all kids in the system. And Coulter was fired up with this.
I would like to know how liberals would react if this were a program coming out of the Department of Defense. But the moment you start reading about this class, you see it's not really to learn Arabic. It's to make sure we understand that Muslims aren't all terrorists. Well, yeah, okay, but all terrorists are Muslims.
Last week with the intelligence, I wouldn't mind the CIA using that money to give grants maybe in colleges so people can learn it, so maybe get some more intelligence officials, but I think it'd be much more useful to learn the language of your bankers. Teach them Mandarin. We're going to need to learn it.
It wasn't just language.
There it is. But
I'll tell you why.
Because they were funded, Bob, because they were given
it's coming out of Washington, D.C. This is what happens when Washington, D.C. decides it's going to send money somewhere and they're going to give it an earmark. We have the same thing down in Florida where they're sending money down to Florida to make the schools green. The schools are brand new, but that money has to be used for that thing. It's ridiculous.
We need to understand.
You can do what you want. You can play games and say, by the way, we're going to have 4 or 5 or 6% GDP growth. That's why the budget's
2009 was built on 8%.
only going to add $1 trillion. But if it doesn't happen, and Smitty's 100% right, when it's 1% or 2%, their numbers are all off, and it happens to be double the debt that goes into.
There's one thing I'll concede, and that is that none of us have a roadmap into the future. And whenever you make projections are just that. You can't anticipate
that's where I will
wars or
include
anything
the
else.
president's name in this, and that's the president President Obama always has a very rosy outlook that he's pinning his budgets on.
Now
that's
we have to
the
disagree.
problem with
Now
this.
we have to disagree. First of all, as a president, you have to be somewhat optimistic, do you not? You have massive.
No. As a businessman, you're conservative. As a
Chris,
businessman.
as a business guy, if you wanted investors, if you wanted people to have confidence in the Chris Markowski investment plan, can you base it on BS?
No, you cannot, because everyone's going to run away, and that's what's going to happen in regards to our debt. Today, PIMCO dumped a ton of U.S. Treasuries, and it's going to continue to happen. You got to understand something. We borrow money short-term here in this country. It's like those adjustable rate mortgages everybody got real high on for a long period of time. When we can't borrow money at the same rate, this budget is gone.
So let me ask you a
It's
question.
done.
Don't you have to, as a matter of budgeting, don't you have to make some economic forecast? Do you just take the worst picture imaginable and
the most
paint your budget to that?
Yes.
No, I don't think you take the most conservative because you take the most reasonable. You don't just say, we're going to heck in a handbasket. I think unemployment, we're going to be lousy.
But if you have extra money when it's left over, then you go ahead and you have your other programs.
And why are we not talking about the president's ability?
What about your own budget at home? Are you going to make your budget out to be the best case scenario for the next 5 years?
Did I say the best case? I said the most reasonable case available.
That's what you have to do. On you today.
Let it be on me.
Would you tell your wife, don't worry, I'll probably get a 20%
No, I wouldn't, but I would tell her
next year, so go spend it?
I wouldn't do that. But should the president then say, what should I tell her? Honey, I'm going to be unemployed. Any income, all my clients are going to fire me. The house is going to burn down. We're not going to have insurance. You have to do it reasonably.
Can we cut?
So what?
That's okay?
Absolutely, it's okay. What are we doing here? Did you ever hear of collective bargaining agreements? Collective bargaining agreements are those things that unions sit down with management, they negotiate them, and they shake hands. What happened to word is your bond? Now we can't afford it. We make all these promises, and because we can't afford it, we say, forget about you. You're retired. You're out. You're older. We're not going to do this anymore. That's outrageous.
Joey, Omaha, within the next 10 years, one-third
so
of the budget will be going
So do it prospectively.
Retirees' health care.
Do it so then you got to fix the system, right? You got to fix the health system. So what do we do? Here's what we do.
Oh, go real quick.
What we have to do is we have to honor our obligations and attempt to fix a health care system that is absolutely broken and cost prohibitive going forward. Prospectively, not violate agreements we have with people.
So how are they going to meet their obligations? How? They're going to print money? Our municipalities?
You should think about that when you enter into contractual
obligations. But these are politicians, and more often than not, they're dumb as a box of rocks. They never run a business ever in their entire lives, and they don't understand that they make promises that they can't keep. Do you know that Gray Davis made promises for the workers in California based upon a stock market that he thought today would be at 28,000?
Hang on, Doctor.
Will be taken. He'll have to resign, or he's already out. What's that?
They're broke.
Look, the point of the matter is that if people are into government jobs and they accept certain salaries and it's fine with everybody, who am I to say that their scale is off base?
We're not in California. Tax dollars are going $534,000 to a police officer.
You know what? You have a point, though. You know, Ben Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it. And if the people in that municipality are not paying attention to what they're paying their employees, that's a problem. And people really have to pay greater attention.
Eric, a Republican agreed with me.
Hey, you know.
I don't agree with the salary. I don't agree with the salary, but people have to pay closer attention.
Side of the stage for you.
That's not left.
No, but Doctor, with the point that Chris, I hope. Welcome back to Follow the Money. Did you hear President Obama last week as he was saying goodbye to Robert Gibbs? He told a touching story about his tie. Take a listen.
Somebody, I don't remember who it was, turned and said, you know what? What about Gibbs's tie? What about Gibbs's tie? That might look good. And frankly, Robert didn't want to give it up because he thought he looked really good in the tie. But eventually, he was willing to take one for the Gipper, and so he took off his tie, and I put it on, and that's the tie that I wore.
The Gipper? The Gipper? That's right. You heard him. President Obama just compared himself to none other than Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, himself. Let me go to the viewer email. Let me tell you what you guys said. So I asked you at home for your thoughts, and let's just say didn't have many kind words for the current commander-in-chief. First, Jim writes, did you say Gipper or Ripper? Ooh. Angie says he's the anti-Gipper, the bizarro world Gipper, the wannabe Gipper. Curtis asked, did he say Gipper or Grifter? Ken says it was supposed to be the Griper. Ken R. writes, Obama is the fibber. I can't believe he was saying this morning that the government needs to live within its means while trying to sell a $3.7 trillion budget. What a joke. And Stefan says the arrogance of that man who puts government before its citizens to compare himself to a man that puts citizens and their freedoms before the government. Joey, for the White House to have a response to Egypt. We bet we were waiting. Where's the podium? It's empty. It's blank. Where's Gibbs? Where's Obama? Nowhere, nowhere. But Smitty points out,
they got to watch. They got to watch
they'll
Fox.
come to the podium for a tie.
That's where Leon Panetta gets his information, right? That's where he found out about the thing, right?
TV.
TV.
Yeah, that's
Twitter.
Right. That's right.
He watches Follow the Money. Only we had the story right. They missed it.
Yes.
Nothing like him. Nothing like him. Thoughts on Reagan?
I think Reagan was very effective. I think he was very grandfatherly. I think he really instilled a measure of confidence in this country. He knew that we can do better and we could do more.
Why would he use the Gipper reference?
And because I think that Obama instills those in us, too.
As a Ronald Reagan, the Gipper? By the way, the Gipper George, the Gipper Gip, I mean,
when I see optimism in Obama. I do. I see a person who really has a vision for the country, who wants to do better, who is effective at what he does, who communicates with the masses, who lays out agendas. I don't think it's such a false comparison.
Government is not the solution. Government is the problem.
That's where they part ways.
That is the difference. That's the difference between the two. I'm sure Obama wants to do well by the country, but you know what? He's wrong. It's not through government.
That's a philosophical difference.
I would agree with that he has good intentions. It's just the effectiveness of his so-called solutions that are just not working, and the American people are not seeing results.